Thank you. My name is Zef Kivungi. We will have the discussion around integrated solid waste management in Kenya, the potential of distributed energy from MSW in Nairobi. I have worked with under the supervision of Professor Jim Baird in the last few months to come up with this. This introduction will look at what motivated this work or this research. One, Kenya as a country has an electrification level which is quite low, just about 30%. And this is mainly a central grid. Every generator, independent and otherwise, is working towards linking their generation to the grid. And policy only supports that kind of arrangement. There is heavy reliance on hydro and imported oil. 32.7% of all electricity used in 2012, when we have statistics, has come from imported oil. Heavy reliance on hydro, we mentioned that. Dirty biomass is still a main use. In terms of over 80% of all energy used in Kenya comes from biomass. And this is charcoal, this is wood, this is other agricultural wastes. And that is a major concern, mainly for cooking. Waste remains a nuisance. It's not considered a resource. And so there's a need to shift towards distributed energy, energy from waste technologies, and waste to be considered as a resource. Literature review. This covered waste composition, or rather came up with the following realizations, that waste composition is quite different from what we have in the UK. Attitudes around waste. Nuisance is what waste is, and it has no value. Mixed waste is another major concern when we are considering technologies to recover energy from waste. And this means separation is required, and yet it's quite a complex thing. Some researchers have shown that in some countries, they have asked or found out if even if you are to give incentives for people to separate their waste, they will still say no. And so the way to introduce this separation might become a major challenge moving forward. Electrification is a key goal of the government, so if there was a way to generate electricity from waste, then that should get government support much easier because it supports what the government is doing. And also the LPG concept, using gas for cooking especially, this is natural gas for this case, or petroleum gas, then that would also get proper government support. Technology transfer from the European Union may not necessarily work. This has been found out of reasons around the composition of the waste. And then central grid, which remains the main approach in most African countries, is continuing to hurt the growth of forests or the existence of forests, and also make reliability more of a challenge. So there is a need to shift to integrated solid waste management, which must include energy recovery. So the research methods employed in this included interviews and site visits, and interviews were government, UNEP and other NGOs, abattoir operators, waste companies, and JICA, Japanese International Cooperation Agency, which is what came up with the master plan around waste management in Nairobi. Site visits were for small biogas operators, abattoirs, and households, dump sites, and charcoal and LPG dealers. And this is results that have come out of this project. That graphic shows a number of things. The first one is legal licensed waste collectors dumping waste in an illegal place. And what that means is there was a dump site, yes, but it has been full to capacity, and now they're dumping away from the real dump site. And that already tells us why we need to have sanitary landfills. The next one is illegal dump site on the roadside, and that means the fact that it's happening in a middle income neighborhood tells that it is still possible for people to continue doing this without much penalties or without much fear for reasons to do with either policy breakdowns or lack of accountability as to who was handling this. And the third one explains those two in a number of ways. Zoning has happened in the city at the moment, as we'll see in the next slide, but at the moment only the city center, which is the central business district, is clearly a zone. The others are proposed zones. The zoning has reasons that we are going to share shortly, but in the city center, you see that truck there which has got, it's branded, which means if they were to dump in a wrong place, it is easy to track them because we know the branding. But the other one is a truck also collecting waste within a neighborhood in the city, has no branding, and is even hard to see the registration number. So if they were to dump in the wrong place, it is not easy to follow or track them. And in line with the zoning, you see in the city center and a few other places like shopping malls, they have this, they have introduced separation bins. Good idea, but when the collectors come, they pick everything and put it in the same truck and potentially just go dump it in the same place. So the separation might be working in the front side, but it is going to collapse at the end of the pipe. And you can see also that incineration is still happening illegally, or rather, it's still happening in the open. Further on resorts, the city authorities reckon about 2,000 tons of waste is collected every day. And this waste is largely organic, and this number is also an estimate for two reasons. One, there is no need to really measure weight, the weight of waste at the moment. And the other reason is there is no value to waste. It also implies that the different places' capacity to measure can be different. There are places where waste is just thrown out and somebody else decides to pick it and move it elsewhere. There are places where waste is dumped in the right place in the right way. There is rampant illegal dumping, and then biogas and LPG is also in the current energy policy, which means they are promoting the use of gas, especially to protect forests in the country, and there are no incentives for either of these as yet. So looking at one of these biogas projects that has been done by SNV of the Netherlands, they have already installed about 12,000 digesters. This is 12,000 households, which some are bigger, others are small, but the small one they have is the 8 cubic meters. So for the purposes of these empirical calculations, we have just considered the 8 cubic meter capacity one, which, as you see in the second table, is equivalent to 86,400 kilograms of wood. That's like a forest. This is equivalent, its equivalent energy is about 126 to 158,000 on the higher side gigawatt hours per year. If you were to install the grid or electricity coming from the grid, extend it to supply that amount of energy, the amount of resources, speaking purely of finances, that you need for that versus what has been spent on this was found to be about 27% less if you do biogas compared to the usual HF4 power plant, the cheapest power plant you could have. And this does not include distribution costs. So obviously, there's a good case here for the biogas. Thermal treatment, coming back to the city, the waste levels that we have at the moment and the projected number of tons of waste generated, taken to have the calorific value of 6 megajoules per kilogram, which is quite complicated, or rather quite unlikely, would easily give the country 393 gigawatt hours more of electricity annually. That's about 5% more or increase of what we have as of 2012. So that's one. And then we look at the anaerobic digestion area between 2015, which is an immediate one, which is not likely to happen, versus if this approach was taken by the year 2030, there would be an extra 28.9%. This is about 17 gigawatt hours more energy supplied from anaerobic digestion. This is just absolute energy. So it might not be good to add it on top of electricity, because once you convert it, then that's why we have the second table here that shows us there is only going to be an extra 11.5% if we are to convert that gas into electricity, given the thermodynamic losses. Obviously, a lot more than the thermal treatment, and that means anaerobic digestion carries the day in this case. There was a consideration also in a similar manner for collection of gas from landfills, which is quite a small figure, and so there needs to be maximum recovery of energy in a way that is controlled and in a way that energy is the main focus. And this is a summary there: plant capacity, electricity, and then looking at nationally. Anaerobic digestion in Kenya could give 3916 gigawatt hours per year. This is now considering other agricultural wastes in the sugar industry and other industries, the rice industry, which is about 50% of all the electricity we have today in terms of the output. And another reason you would not, or we would not want to use the gas for making electricity is because the conversion losses will tend to be high. Then it is recommended within this, or a consideration that was made within the research was to upgrade this gas, and there will be several reasons for that. Upgrading would mean cleaning it up, rid it of the carbon dioxide and other gases that obviously occur within it, traces of oxygen and water moisture, or rather moisture, and then hydrogen sulfide. And then compress this gas for storage and also for ease in transportation, meaning we could produce this gas within Nairobi, but avail it in those places that need the energy more. We could produce this gas in one part of the city and transport it to the slum for usage, where they don't have electricity and other cooking fuel. It could also be bottled for domestic use to complement the government push for adoption of LPG. And then it would end up saving forests and decrease the pressure on the grid. Finally, we make some recommendations and conclusions. Integrated solid waste management is crucial as of this moment in Nairobi and other cities in Kenya and other African countries. It has to include sanitary landfills because it controls the spread of illegal dump sites, meaning once it is full, then we know it is full. And another thing about that is the feasibility studies, or rather feasibility studies, have to be conducted prior, so that we don't end up picking technologies that have worked maybe very well in Sweden and expect them to work precisely the same way in Africa, given the differences in attitudes, cultures, and waste composition. The second thing is municipal solid waste can increase the access to clean energy within the country. This is Nairobi and elsewhere. That's been proven already. Thermal technologies are easier to deploy but they are riskier, meaning you get less energy. It's easy. You just set it up, get the waste in there, burn it under the right environment, and once that happens, you could easily generate electricity. But they are riskier because they could easily choke and fail, because the waste it has been tested under is different from what you're likely to find in Nairobi and other such cities. The use of biogas needs to remain primary energy, and one reason is you get more absolute energy. This is to say, if you are to use it for electricity, you lose a lot of that as thermal, which is not going to have any, or rather as heat, which may not have any use in a hot climate in Kenya and other sub-Saharan African countries. And also you get organic fertilizer, and there will be eventually less greenhouse gases emitted from this. Thank you.